Surge Copper, CEO Leif Nielsen. So Surge is developing several deposits in it's what it's calling its UTSA project, and as they say, the best place to look for a deposit is near a mine, and they are close to the Huckleberry mine and mill complex. And so in recent months, Leif has moved the project along quite nicely with some pretty interesting drill results. So with that, I'll turn it over to Leif to get into the details.
Thanks, Pierre, for the intro. You can, assuming you can hear me, you can flip ahead a couple slides.
Yep.
There you go. Thanks. So I think a lot of the key points are captured here, so I'll probably spend a couple minutes here. But I think the Surge story, it's simple in one sense and has some complexities in the other. So it's simple in the sense that we are focused entirely in one area, as Pierre alluded to. We have assembled a very large land package that surrounds the Huckleberry mine, which is owned by another TSX listed company called Imperial Metals. This is a mine that's been on care and maintenance for about 5 years. Imperial put it on care and maintenance in 2016 due to depressed copper prices, and at that time it had a reserve life that was meant to take it to 2021, so about 5 years forward from that point in time. Obviously, a lot of infrastructure exists in this region, partly because of the mine, including a power line to that location, but also because it's an extensively, or it's in the heart of forestry country in central BC. There's an extensive network of forest roads that crisscross the property area, which helps us out a lot in terms of exploring certain areas of the property. Also, the mine road connects into the Trans-Canada Highway, abundant freshwater resources in the area, and of course, multiple ports over on the Pacific coast to the west. Where the story gets a bit complicated, I suppose, is that in I think the equity value buildup, I think we span the full spectrum from advanced resources that we're progressing through the de-risking and development sequence. But also there's a pretty significant, generative or exploration and discovery aspect to the story. So on the former, we control 4 porphyry deposits divided across 2 projects, which are highlighted under the green box there. So the UTSA project and the Berg project. The total resource inventory between those two is about 834 million tons of copper porphyry resources in the M&I categories. The average grade is in the low to mid 0.4% copper equivalent range. The land package is quite large. It's 1,200 square kilometers or so. It's all contiguous. We've stitched it together through call it 4 or 5 different transactions, as well as direct staking. There's abundant exploration upside in this region. A couple of the deposits that comprise the UTSA resource inventory were blind discoveries made by Surge under a bit of soil cover not very long ago, a decade or so ago. There's huge numbers of showings and other evidence of prospectivity in the district. So we have a pipeline today that's probably a dozen or so different targets that we're looking to systematically take up the curve in terms of either drilling or getting more into a drill ready state. The first step in that mission was flying a comprehensive ZTEM survey across the entire district, which we did in June of this year, and we're still awaiting the final inversion and targeting results from that. We expect that to probably deliver some new targets to us that were not previously known, but also be a very helpful guide in understanding the overall structural architecture and makeup of a lot of the more known occurrences in the region. A lot of the investment since over the last 12 months since we reactivated activity at the company has been more conservative drilling related to resource advancement at the West Seal deposit, which is the largest deposit that comprises the UTSA project. So a lot of the highlighted drill results that you see under the red box there are just some of the results that have come out of that West Seal resource drilling. So it's a mix of infill and expansion drilling that has gone on over the last year. Pretty substantial investment there, about 30,000 meters of additional resource drilling, as well as some exploration drilling in the periphery of the deposit area, which I'll speak about in a moment. And then under the yellow box there is just to talk about the team. When I got involved with the company earlier this year, it was early on in this process of refreshing the board and the management of the company. I think we've had some considerable success in doing that over the last year, attracting quite a lot of talent to the company, both in terms of experienced directors as well as technical talent to the company. You can flip to the next page. So this just gives you a sense of where we are in BC. Huckleberry, of course, shown there on the map in west central British Columbia. The map there just gives you a sense of the claim package. So the blue stuff we own 100% of, and the black property is the Berg property, which is under a 70% earn-in option agreement with Centerra Gold. Again, it's all one contiguous land package. We have stitched it together through a number of transactions. To give you a sense of scale, from Berg down to the Seal deposits is about 28 kilometers. In that belt, there's 7 known porphyry deposits. We control 5 of them. 4 of those have resources on them, and there is a large number of showings and other exploration targets around this district. Next slide, please. This is just a Google Earth look at the UTSA project. You can see the Huckleberry mine there in the midground. The 3 deposits that comprise the UTSA project are in the foreground. I'd point out that of a total inventory of 224 million tons, the current pit constrained resource at West Seal is the majority. It's 167 million tons. And most of the drilling that we completed over the last year is basically focused in that area to the lower left of this picture, a mixture of resource expansion drilling at West Seal and then some exploration drilling as well. Berg I'll show you on a different image, but you can see it here in about 20 Ks in the distance behind Huckleberry. Next page. This summarizes the drilling that we've done since November of last year. So about 44,000 meters of total drilling at the UTSA project, divided into 3 buckets. 30,000 meters of that is resource drilling around the margins of the West Seal deposit. Again, a mix of expansion and infill drilling. The other 14,000 has been exploration drilling in the periphery of what you see on the map there to the right. Half of that is actually in one particular zone. So we drilled into an expansion or an extension of a breccia zone to the north of the Seal deposits and decided to accelerate some investment into that. It's pretty shallow stuff, so there's a lot of holes, but they're all pretty shallow holes. The opportunity here is that it's a different style of mineralization, tends to be higher grade, both in terms of copper and precious metals. Because it's a breccia style of mineralization, the tonnage potential is obviously not the same as a porphyry deposit, but the economic opportunity here is to delineate a at or near surface high grade zone that from a mining perspective would be sequenced early on. Next page, please. So this is another Google Earth image from 180 degrees in the other direction. So this is showing the Berg deposit in the foreground to the left, and you can see Huckleberry and UTSA, the prior view I was showing in the background. Berg is a big porphyry deposit. It's obviously not as topographically blessed as UTSA, but it sits up in a saddle-shaped glacial cirque up in the mountains. It's a pit constrained resource of 600 million tons. The deposit is actually quite favorably situated in the bottom of that shape, so that pit constrained resource has a strip ratio of about 1.8. This is a project that has had considerable historical investment by Placer Dome, Terrain Metals, and others. It's been pretty dormant for a decade or more, so the first order of business after we took over operatorship was to rehab the access trail to the deposit. We got started with that in the early summer this year. completed that work in 6 or 7 weeks, and have commenced the first drill program under our operatorship in the late summer. Next slide, please. The deposit it's got some interesting features to it. So the images on the right are a planned slice and a cross section through the block models. The implication here is that, while the average grade is the 0.41% that I referenced before, that grade is not just randomly distributed. It's structurally controlled, if you will, in some of these vertically oriented chutes around the deposit. We think that's going to deliver quite a lot of optionality in terms of how this thing can ultimately be mined. I'm showing on the left there a block model cutoff grade sensitivity chart, which shows at the very far end there's about 100 million tons of 0.6% copper equivalent. I think in a deposit like this, there's not always physically realizable mining scenarios that allow you to move up and down that curve, but given the structural controls and the nature of how that grade is distributed throughout the deposit, we think there's going to be quite a bit of optionality around how we look at the mineability here. Next slide, please. So I talked about the first drill program that we're engaged in right now at Berg. So the image at the lower left is taken not too long ago, a few weeks ago, up at the newly rehabbed camp up at Berg. We initiated a 4,500 meter drill program. Those holes the planned holes anyways, are shown on the image to the right. So as I said, a pretty substantial historical investment there, shown in the black dots, and the yellow dots are the holes that we have either completed or are underway at Berg this year. The objective of the program, which will be followed up on next year, is to begin the process of upgrading the the drill hole database so that it has full 33, 35 metal assays as opposed to just 2, as well as proper collar surveys, things of that nature. More economically, we're also focused on trying to expand some of those high grade chutes that I talked about on the prior page. Next slide, please. So this is moving on to the exploration opportunity across the whole district. The map on the right, it's quite a bit busy, but all the text boxes there are meant to provide some description of what a lot of these targets are. I would divide them into 2 categories, which are shown as the bottom 2 rungs on that pyramid to the lower left. So some of these are really grassroots targets. They are essentially grab samples, rock chip samples, alteration mappings, things of that nature. Other targets are far more advanced, where there's multiple overlapping geophysical signatures, drill confirmation, things of that nature. There's about a dozen in total. And as I said at the top, one of the first things that we're doing to aid us in advancing this whole part of the story was a ZTEM survey that we completed over the entire district. So basically everything you see on the map there has been covered with the same consistent line kilometer spacing of ZTEM. That is essentially a resistivity survey technology. There's some clever features of it that allow you to image down to about 1 kilometer depth. We're not necessarily looking for mineralization at that depth, but it's a very effective way to image lithology, structure, alteration, things of that nature, which are of course very important in a porphyry cluster intrusive environment like we have here. So I think a really impressive and exciting exploration pipeline we have across this district that we're really just getting started on in terms of our focus going forward. Next slide, please. This is probably one of the more mature targets, so it's the one that we're arguably the most excited about. It's called Burgett. It sits in the north central part of the district. There's a few things to say about it. One is that we were the company that consolidated the ownership package here. So there's a few gray lines you can see on the image at right. We own 100% of those portions. Everything else is under the 70% earn-in. The other sort of colors you see on the map, the background color is total magnetic intensity. So there's a nice magnetic aureole anomaly that you like to see in a porphyry environment. There's a fault that runs right through the middle of this, and then the dots are copper and soil geochem samples taken in the past. The dot density there is over on the west side of the faults, and there's some drill confirmation done over there. A lot of those results are not, huge grade or huge thicknesses, but if you take the totality of the information here, I think the most attractive areas to drill are over on the east side of that fault, and there's been no drilling done in that area. Part of that is the ownership structure I talked about. The other part is, 20 years ago when there was work being done in this area, there was a permanent ice pack over in the eastern portion there. That ice is now receded or is otherwise gone, exposing a very large gossan. So the best part of the geophysical anomaly, best part of the copper and soil anomaly, interpreted structure, alteration, etc., is over on the eastern portion, which is more or less drill ready. So we're quite excited to get up there with our first drill program next year. Next slide, please. This is just very briefly a tuck-in acquisition that we made very recently. I think it speaks to the ability to add pretty advanced exploration targets in this district. Fairly simple, clean deal, not a lot of outlay up front. There is a very large mapped alteration zone and a historical drill confirmation from near surface, ending in mineralization at 0.33% copper and 0.02% moly. It's an area that we already have collected geophysics on, so we've got a leg up in that regard. It's also, in comparison to other areas in the Berg property where there's higher elevation and topographical challenges, this is in a low-lying area that has a forest road running right through it. So there's strong potential to be able to work here year-round in the future. Next slide, please. So just in conclusion, there's been a huge amount of activity at the company really since about a year ago, and in particular over the summer season. As I'm sure you've heard from other companies, assay labs are moving a bit slow this year. So we've got a huge backlog of results from a lot of that work. We have about 52 holes from the SEAL drill program still pending assay. 39 of those are exploration holes, including into the SEAL breccia zone that I talked about. In addition to that, the program we ran at Berg, we haven't released any results from that yet, so that's all pending as well. The inversion and targeting results from the regional geophysics and the description of how that's going to help us move forward on advancing the pipeline of exploration targets is yet to come. And lastly, the resource update at SEAL, which will result from that 30,000 meters of additional drilling, is something that we'll be targeting for the fall as well. Last slide is the next one, I believe. So $70 million market cap today, 11 million in cash, fairly closely held company in terms of insiders and close associates. We really did the first institutional round for the company earlier this summer, so really just starting to grow that blue slice of the pie there. Altius were a lead order in that financing that we disclosed, and they're a pretty, I think, big supporter of what we're doing as a financial investor in the company. Next slide, please. I'll just end here. So these are some images taken over the last year of some of the various activities. So you can see the bit of the topography and lay of the land there on the left, helicopter flying the Z-Tem survey, some road improvements on the access road to Berg, top middle, and then 2 images showing drill rigs turning at both Berg and West Seal earlier this year. I'll pause there and hand it back to you, Pierre.
Yeah, thanks, Leif. Lots to consider, and I guess that leads me to the question: how do you prioritize this? What's the strategy going forward? Are there parts that will be partnered, or how do you go about managing such a portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, on the exploration side, I mean, TBD. If we discover something completely new and it sort of changes our priority, that's something we can think about at that time in terms of partnering. I would say with the more concrete asset base today between UTSA and Berg, the strategy over I think near to midterm is really teasing out the standalone project potential. So I didn't include it in this presentation, but the company did a PEA about 5 years ago that looked at some of the explicit economics of, would there be a compelling opportunity to toll mill some of the material from UTSA at Huckleberry. I think it's an interesting concept. It's not something that we're trying to update or rehash. I think that remains an interesting part of the overall optionality of what we're doing, as is usually the case when you have latent infrastructure like that. But in terms of our priorities over the near to midterm, it's really advancing the deposits we have, getting ready to look at standalone economic analysis of those projects, and exploring this very fertile prospective district.
Right. And I guess a question you probably have quite a bit is with respect to UTSA, to what extent do you need to rely on Huckleberry when the time comes to put it into production? Is the view that it'll be standalone, or do you need to have some kind of tie-up with Huckleberry?
Well, Pierre, I can't point you to a feasibility study that gives you a sort of quantitative view on do you need to or do you not. So our perspective is that these are deposits that are well higher than the average operating reserve grade in BC. So there's good potential for there to be sound standalone development potential. Obviously, when you have a mill that's on care and maintenance close by, that presents the opportunity for there to be synergies and the cherry on top in terms of a lower capital pathway into production. So I would sort of turn that question in reverse. It's not really do we need to, it's sort of what does the standalone opportunity look like? And I think the company has disclosed historically a flavor for what the sort of scale of synergies and scale of CapEx savings might be if there is something to be done with Huckleberry.
Right. Okay. Okay, Leif. Well, it's 1:24, so I think we'll end it there. But thank you very much. It's great. It's great to see activity in BC. I mean, generally, has the province been supportive? Have you felt a good relationship with the governments and the First Nations and all the stakeholders?
Yeah, I mean, for the stage of where the projects are at, absolutely. We've again, when we reactivated our work about a year ago, we sort of reconfirmed a number of exploration agreements we had with regional stakeholders. We're undergoing a permit renewal process in the normal course for our Berg property, and we're actively engaged with mines as we were upgrading that road, as I mentioned. So I would say very good engagement and support from all of those levels for where we are. We're of course not in the advanced permitting stage for any project at the moment, but for where we are, it's sort of all signs are very positive.
Great. Okay. Well, Leif, thank you very much. Really appreciate your presenting today.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invite, Pierre. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that ends it